Recorded at the studios of Chicago Public Media, WBEZ, this is Stages to Success. The drive to excel is universal, as is the pride in a job well done. Whether you're staring down a decision maker for a multi-million-dollar contract, a television camera or microphone, a negotiating adversary, or an irate conductor, the pressure to perform can be exhilarating and exhausting. Join me and meet great storytellers from music and business. Stages to Success is brought to you by
NYCAR, the Northern Illinois Commercial Association of Realtors.
Today's guest is the Doyenne of commercial real estate in Chicago. Goldie Wolfe-Miller owned and ran the largest woman-owned commercial real estate brokerage in the country. She is currently a principal of Millbrook Companies, an investor-owner of commercial buildings. The arc of Goldie's story has to be heard to be believed. I began our interview asking Goldie about her name, which has gone from being a brand in Chicago business to an aspirational goal for young women graduate students in real estate. Thanks so much for doing this today. I've heard about you since I worked at Pro10 with Renee Batzelis. And, you talked about in terms now the Goldie Miller Initiative.
The initiative is actually called Goldie Wolfe-Miller, so that it does melt the days that I was doing active tenant rep and had my own company, and the last 20 years I've been Goldie Wolfe-Miller. So it's an interesting change. I guess you can call it a change of life because it's very, very competitive. As you know, of all people, you would know how competitive the tenant rep market is, and how hard we all have to work, or certainly work to get that representation going.
And Wolf.
So the name is Goldie Wolfe-Miller today, but
right.
It was when I was working in roubloff and I had my own company. The name of the company was Goldie B. Wolfe and Company.
Okay, and that was the brand, sort of Goldie B. Wolfe.
That's the brand.
Uh-huh.
That's the name. That's the brand.
Yeah, and
box,
and
right?
it's funny because I think of you now as an asset owner with Millbrook Properties.
The Millbrook started way before me. Millbrook
Really?
was actually, Millbrook was my husband Jack, who is Jack Miller, and his brother Harvey. And the Millbrook started with, actually it stands for Miller, Brothers, and Kids, because when they had the company Quill, they basically started the real estate end of it, and they built their big corporate facility on Route 22.
Mm-hmm.
And so Millbrook was way before me. And so when I married Jack, I started an entity called Millbrook Corporate Real Estate Services.
And you said that what they originally were doing was Quill, the office products company?
Right. That's what they started with. I'm thinking it was 50 years ago. That's the company they started. And when they moved to Lincolnshire, they bought this acreage and built their corporate headquarters. And then they had extra acreage, and that's basically what they had. And as a sidebar, they said, okay, we've got this corporate facility, and we have warehouses, and they had 6 or 7 warehouses all over the country. They said, well, maybe we'll build an office building. And so they built the first office building on their site, and lo and behold, they got a base load tenant. You know what that is. And so when I married Jack, I said, hey, Jack, you're in the real estate business. He said, oh, no, this is just, we filled up a building. Well, they filled up a second building and a third building. And so that's how they started in the real estate business before me. So they've expanded, and we just bought a building in Milwaukee and in Philadelphia. So, as I said, they were in it before I started, but we've expanded it because now, if you ask my husband, he is in the real estate business. So it's very exciting.
And Goldie Wolfe has gone from the tenant rep side to the dark side of the force on the landlord side of the equation. So
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, quite.
And I'm not sure it's the dark side. I think to be very honest with you, I think it's the brighter side, because we get involved in, like in Milwaukee, we actually got involved in the retrofit and the the color of the floors and the media rooms and the elevators, and it was almost like building a brand new building and understanding what needs of the tenant are. Because as a tenant rep, I know what they look for, just like you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just it's a wonderful position to be in.
Yeah, Vern Schultz had said in our previous episode that it just didn't work out for him timing-wise with the investments he made on the development side, but that there was nothing quite like driving by a development that you saw from the ground up, and it was your concept, and it did well, it was good for the economy, and it was a pretty building. He said there was a real pride in that part of the work.
I have to tell you, pride is, and I know that's his word, but that's the word I use all the time. We have to be proud of what we do. And we're very proud of the buildings, and we have a sense of pride as we walk through them, and we have a sense of pride that we, as corny as it is, pick the materials, pick the. There's a little sparkle. I'll give you a little point. On the floor in the Milwaukee building, we put a little sparkle on the floor because it's beautiful, and everything is upgraded and it's well located. And if we put our name on it, and we've talked about this in terms of the Millbrook company, we want tenants to feel almost like the clients of Quill. They had immaculate customer service. So you translate that into real estate. We want the tenants to feel that they're in the best of buildings, the best services. They're owner occupied. We own our buildings. We don't have to work with an institution. And we have a sense of pride of what we do. Mm-hmm. So at our age, we have we've learned across the years it's much better to have a top quality facility because it keeps tenants. I mean, that's really the name of the game. Getting them is maybe the hardest, but the true test, can you keep them for long periods of time? And so that's what we work very hard at.
Right. I started in real estate with a small development company in upstate New York, and I saw the creativity of that part of the job, the pride that the partners took in taking an old mill building and turning it into a multi-use building or a mixed-use development. And it truly was a creative, exciting process that they were involved in, and super high risk.
I don't think you understand how high a risk it is. Everyone thinks, oh my gosh, when you look at these buildings and commissions and and that you're building this new building, you think everything goes up. Well, let me tell you, everything does not go up. Mm-hmm. It goes down too. So yes, there's a sense of pride, and there's a sense of I always use the word passion too. You have to love what you're doing.
Yes.
And I think in real estate, certainly I had the love of our industry in terms of loved what I was doing, but I think it's across the board in all honesty, any organization, company, profession. If you don't love what you're doing, if you don't have a passion for it, it becomes a job. Mm-hmm. And then the likelihood is, in all honesty, you're not going to be successful at it.
I want to rewind the clock here. So before you were Goldie Wolfe, what was your family name when you were growing up?
Well, that's an interesting story. My name was Goldie Brandelstein, and I'm a child of a Holocaust survivor. So I was born in Austria right after the war in a displaced persons camp.
Wow.
And came over, and I always say this, on a boat with a babushka, because that's what we had. It was my mother, my father, my brother, and me. And my mother's family was entirely wiped out. She had 4 brothers, a mother and father, and a sister, and they all were killed during the war, and my father's family, too. So we came over, just the 4 of us, and settled in New York because that's where I had an aunt, and then came to Chicago. So that's my history in terms of coming to the States, and became a citizen. I'm an immigrant, and I'm a flag-waving American, and recognize how important this country is as corny as that sounds.
No, it's not my father was an immigrant.
Well, and you know the importance of it, and you know what success could mean, but just the fact of livelihood is so critical. Making a living is so critical. Learning the language is so critical. So
what industry
John,
did Mr. Brandelstein work in when he got to New York?
He was a butcher. He was a butcher in Poland, and he was a butcher in Chicago, in New York. And we came to Chicago. He also became a butcher, and we had a kosher meat market.
And did your mother work there with him by any chance?
Totally, from the morning to night. She was, we didn't have nannies, right? So she had to take care of everything, and she delivered the packages of meat at night, and I went with her.
So was that your introduction to work, Goldie? You're helping your mother deliver. Was there this expectation of our daughter's going to work hard, she's going to have a job, or was it as soon as she does well, she's going to find herself a man and settle down and she'll never have to work again?
Well, you're talking about lots and lots of years ago, so I can tell you what I think I remember. So we didn't have these grand visions. I don't remember being told as a kid what I should or shouldn't do. In all honesty, I just saw what my mother and father did, which is they worked. I mean, I don't know anything magic about that. There was no grand statement that, oh, my dear daughter, you're going to be successful in life. It was we just went along with what we had to do, and this is what I saw my mother do. She was very persistent. After she died, I gave a speech at the Roosevelt University. I was given a doctorate, and I gave the commencement speech. And in putting it together, I thought about, those days, right? And I thought about, I've always said I've never had a mentor because I was the first woman to do this and this, first female vice president at Roosevelt, at Roubloff, largest woman-owned commercial company in the country in terms of woman-owned when I had the Goldie B. Wolfe Company. And I always say, well, I've had no mentors. Well, you know what? That's not true, I said to myself. As I'm writing the speech, I said, my mother was my mentor, in essence. A mentor, by definition, could include someone that you sort of look up to or aspire to or use as a model. And my mother worked all the time. She was persistent. She drove everyone up a tree, right? She went from working with my dad, and then when he died, she went to, she worked in a factory because she really didn't have command of the English language. And then she worked as in a bookkeeper. Then she went and bought a little cleaning store, and on and on and on. She never gave up.
And she
never gave up.
She went from a factory job to actually owning a little store and running books.
Yes, absolutely. Little store, a little cleaning store. She just was persistent. And so when I think about that, and I think about maybe what I learned, and that's kept me going all these years, if that's the story, it's absolutely her hard work. And my dad worked hard. I mean, he would get up on Saturday morning at 4 o'clock to go to the in Chicago, they had the meat markets, where they were on Roosevelt Road or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they have them anymore, but, that's where he would go, and she would go with him. And we never had a vacation because my dad had a store. So our vacation for at least 18 years was on Sunday to go to the corner. We walked to like a little deli, and that's what we basically did.
And you, I assume, like my dad, you were the first person to ever go to college from your family.
Absolutely.
And where did you go?
First person. Well, it was kind of interesting because basically what you said, or you asked me, was I told to go get married and, live in the suburbs with 3.2 children. My dad wasn't really educated, and he wasn't as supportive, I think, as my mom. My mom pushed education at a grand scale. And so the first year I went to University of Illinois down in Champaign, and when my dad died, I came back and really didn't have any money to go to school. I guess I could have borrowed it, but I went to Roosevelt University, and not only did they give me a 3-year scholarship, but they gave me a job during those 3 years, so that I graduated at Roosevelt. And in fact, that's where I started one of the Goldie Initiative programs, was at Roosevelt. I wanted to give back to the school that really did help me. They, I think I applied to 2 universities at that time, and one was Roosevelt and one was Northwestern, and Northwestern didn't have the financial resources to dole out, or they didn't want to. I'm not sure which one it was, but Roosevelt was very supportive, and they were phenomenal in their generosity. And when I graduated, I can remember it was interesting because I think I was valedictorian, but I'm not exactly sure. I think I was. And I gave the commencement speech there. And then, 40, 50 years later, I give the commencement speech at Roosevelt again. So it was very, very memorable for me. I even tried to find my speech when I graduated college. I know I have it somewhere, but I couldn't find it.
Well, they picked the right girl to take a flyer on, and it's paid back for them, I'm sure, in spades.
Well, we've been very supportive of Roosevelt, and they've, I thought they were just, just like everybody else. You have to look back and say, who are you thankful for and appreciative of? And so Roosevelt was, and still is, something I remember. But now we've taken the Goldie program, or the initiative. Now we're in 5 universities. I wanted to expand it, and we'll get to it, I'm sure, in terms of what we do. But now not only are we at Roosevelt with their graduates, but we're at Northwestern, we're at University of Chicago, we're at the University of Wisconsin, the Grass Camp School, and DePaul.
Great.
So we're now have graduate students in 5 universities, and I'm really very proud of that.
In your bio, it says that you started in advertising. Was that your first step after college?
That was my... You read my bio.
Yeah, she sent it over, so I'm a good boy. I did my homework.
Oh, good. Okay. Well, when I graduated Roosevelt, I absolutely had no idea what I wanted to do. So I knew I had to go make a living. There was no master plan. I had to go make money, and I had a marketing professor who said, go into advertising because you may learn something from the process, because they have creative people, the ones that write copy. They have business people, which are account executives. They have research people. They have media people. So go into advertising, and you'll find where your strength is, right? Mm-hmm. So I applied at J. Walter Thompson, which was, at that point in time, the biggest in the world. And I got a job in research. And it was not magical. It was not fancy. It was... I worked in research, but I learned an awful lot. I spent a whole year. Do you remember what a Frieden calculator is?
No, I don't know what a Frieden calculator is.
We did not have computers, okay? We did not have the iPhones. So I said a Frieden calculator is basically how do I explain it? It's a big machine, and you crank it. So if you want to do multiplication, you crank the Frieden calculator. If you want to do analysis, so it's almost like a slot machine. And I did all my marketing research and all my statistical data, whatever it was, and building charts that had charts. This is what we did. We did research reports. And I was the initial analyst that used this hand-cranking Frieden calculator that doesn't exist anymore, right?
I'll be darned. My older brothers used a slide rule in their science classes, and I'm young enough that by the time I hit those classes in high school, that was obsolete. There were TI calculators to use. So
this is it looks just like the old-time cash register. It looks just like, and it looks like a slot machine. That's exactly what it's like.
Interesting.
And for hour after hour after hour, I would sit in front of this calculator. I'm doing it now as I'm talking to you. Flipping my arm up and down. Putting in numbers, and I would do the analysis of marketing reports. So what I learned from there, what I found fascinating, is the idea of an advertising. And if you think about it, you and I are in sales. We have to write commercials in 30 seconds or 60 seconds, right? We got to write them on whatever it is topic because they're on television, right? So in 30 to 60 seconds, you have to sell something. And by doing the research front end, we learned about motivation. We learned about what motivates people, what's the right wording to use, what's what is critical to someone to act. What does that mean? We use the word AIDA, A-I-D-A. You got to, in 30 to 60 seconds, get attention, interest, develop desire, and develop action. Mm-hmm. So I use that in my own mindset as I was calling on clients. You usually have more than 30 to 60 seconds to do a sales job on a tenant rep deal, right? So if you have 5 minutes, you have 10 minutes. It's a gift. So at least that's what I learned in advertising, and I loved it. And then I went from J. Walter, I went to Needham, Harper & Steers. I was account executive on Johnson's Wax. And I would have meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, 8 o'clock in the morning, Johnson Wax is in Racine, Wisconsin. So for me to get up from Chicago to go to Racine, Wisconsin 3 days a week, I was very tired.
Yeah.
Very tired.
And what was that work environment like? I mean, was it like the Mad Men things that we see on TV, or was it more respectful and calm?
You're going to laugh at me, but, I can't tell you that. I started watching Mad Men, and I didn't relate to it. I think that I'm sure that it was like in any industry. I'm sure it happened somewhere, but in my arena, I didn't see it. And I don't think it was calm. I think it was we were very focused. We were very what I saw. Or what I choose to remember, but I can just remember what it was very professional. I mean, when we were doing marketing plans, we were doing, again, I was in research front end, and even when I became an account executive, it was very, very professional. Now, did we have fun sometimes? Sure. I just love the industry. I love the variety of talent. I love the people. I would walk on one time on the floor of the creative department, and it was a little wild. They were creative, In today's date, maybe they would have, orange hair. I don't know, but in those days, they would just have creative flow on every corner. You go in the marketing department, very professional, very, everyone was suit and tie, and we were worrying about increasing sales. So. Mad Men, I don't know. I'm as I said, I didn't necessarily see it, but remember I was 23 years old at the time, and I didn't have really high positions. I was an analyst for the first 2-3 years, and then I was an account executive and working in Racine, Wisconsin. And Johnson's Wax was a very, very professional, very family-oriented, family-owned companies.
Tell me about why you made a step away in the heyday of advertising and the biggest years they ever had, and moved over to Roubloff. I assume that was your first real estate shop.
Right. Well, that's a question. That's a great question. I loved advertising. I loved the people, and I got promoted. And I had a beautiful office on the top. We were the John Hancock building. I remember it was a beautiful office with beautiful views, and I wasn't making any money. I'm sitting and thinking, I'm working like crazy. I'm getting up at 4, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to be dramatic now. I said the only thing that changed is the size of my waste paper basket. That's my line here. I went from a 6-inch diameter to a 8-inch diameter. So I didn't make enough money. That was number one. I knew that I wasn't a trust fund kid, and I knew that I had to make a living. And I saw, which I found, now that you're asking me, I found disturbing. There was a wonderful fellow who was, again, I was in my late 20s. A wonderful fellow that I worked with was his mid-40s, which you would think is the height of professional expertise, right?
Sure.
The agency lost the account, and he was fired. Now, not because of what he did, well, to some degree, sort of. If they lost the account, the job wasn't done, but who knows why. And I'm sitting and thinking, so I'm not making any money, and the older I'm going to get, I'm going to be not as a positive, in a positive position, it'd be something different. I wouldn't be in control of my own destiny. So I took 6 months off and decided that I wanted to investigate what was out there. I had no responsibilities. I had no, children or whatever it was. And so I said, okay, I'm going to take 6 months to decide what I want to do with my life. Where do I want to go? Now, again, it was a luxury because I only had 6 months money to live on, right? So I started the interview process. I found that I said, let me investigate industries. Let me investigate what I want to do. I did get into an arena that I wanted to go into sales because everything all the people I talked to said, if you want your remuneration equal to your input, you have to go into sales because the harder you work, the more money you can make, right?
Yep.
So I said, okay, I want to go into sales, but I didn't know what. So I started interviewing with paper companies and bag companies and media companies and real estate companies. And finally I had a client that said to me, Goldie, if you're going to go into sales, and that's what you want, if you want your remuneration equal to your input, if that's what you want, sell bridges instead of widgets. I'll never forget that line. I said, well, what do you mean? We said, well, if you sold $1 billion building versus, $1 million paper clips, your remuneration is a little different area. So I said, well, that makes sense. So then I started interviewing in real estate companies, and I probably interviewed in 30 real estate companies, and I finally went to Roubloff, and they offered me a position. I didn't even knew what office, tenant representation was. I didn't even know there was an office leasing department. But I liked Roubloff just because it was like the IBM of real estate. And I figured, just like J. Walter Thompson, if I went into real estate, at least I could learn something from all the departments, which I really worked hard at learning, in terms of what's the office market, what's the development market, what's the management market, what is industrial. They all had that, and Roubloff was in its heyday, and I loved Arthur. He was a character unto himself, and I learned a lot, and I think I learned something that at this point I was just lucky, because I did pick the right industry, and I did pick an area where they had no women. There were no office leasing brokers in the entire city, period. And I worked with a great company. I was there for 20 years.
Yeah, you have that in. I've heard that same reaction to that company, both with Vern Schultz in his interview, who was there for a while, and from my former colleague Gail Sturm at Pro10. She also talked really glowingly about that company. What was it? What was it about him and his culture? What did they do so right that made them the New York Yankees of real estate? When I started Roubloff, Arthur was already, in theory, out. What does that mean? We were on the 15th floor, and he was on the 14th floor. He had run the company for so many years, and then he started doing development, so he moved down to the 14th floor, and Roubloff, the company, was really run by a whole team of other people, like Bud Edelman, like Bill Brown Jr., like Abel Berland. And so the company was a little distinct from Arthur. It was still called Arthur Roubloff and Company, and then they changed it to Roubloff to make it much more corporate and generic. I think the part that was so phenomenal for me personally were the people that were there. There's an argument that says they were, in each individual case, I could pick one of the best and the brightest. When you went to industrial, there was a guy called Dick Lorino. If you went to development, Lee Miglin headed up that group. There was a fellow, I'm trying to remember, in retail. So the wonderful part were the people that were running each of the divisions, they were just
They were bright, they were aggressive, they were successful. Now, that doesn't mean every single one, but that's what I remember. And, it was an awesome organization, and everyone was pretty much independent. They all had their own little fiefdoms, so they were very entrepreneurial. I think that was the other thing that was very interesting. It wasn't corporate, even though it was corporate because they changed the name and they tried to be corporate. It was very entrepreneurial.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really made it unique, in terms of what I see today. And again, sometimes in corporate arenas, when you got thousands of employees, you've got to be a little more organized and certainly more in control. But, here we were a Chicago-based organization. And so all the people were here, the talent was here. Now, we did have, I'm trying to remember, we went to management in Atlanta. There was a fellow called Howard Weinstein who headed up that group, and he was phenomenal. So they were able to expand, but our headquarters was here. And so it was all the action was here. And then there was always Arthur. Arthur was still active, alert, alive, creative, innovative. He basically, I think he named it the Magnificent Mile. They took it after, his calling it that. He named it. He basically developed Sandburg Terrace. I would go see him all the time because I found him fascinating, and he was just, I thought, just a wonderful, warm individual. I would go with him sometimes on Saturdays. I would ride with him in his chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce to Evergreen Plaza, and he would. There was great sense of pride for him to, go walk through. It was probably the first major indoor mall in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just a very unique individual. He had a fourth grade education.
Wow, I never heard that part of it.
Fourth grade education. Fourth grade, and I always marveled. He had 2 phones on his desk, even though he had 2 secretaries or 3 secretaries. If someone at Sandburg Terrace, which was a residential apartment complex that had thousands of residents, had something wrong with their plumbing, they would call Arthur, and he'd pick up the phone and say, "Hello?" I was in his office.
That's great.
So he was very involved, but a great visionary. Some of the words that I used and I use now, I use about my mother, but I got some of those words from Arthur. I mean, he would come back and talk about the most important thing for him in terms of anyone he ever hired, including himself for a job, was persistence. He said, you give me 2 guys, one brilliant individual who's lazy and one total idiot that's persistent. You know who I'm going to pick, don't you? It's the idiot. So persistence is really critical. I remember when I started canvassing, we didn't have, as I said, we didn't have computers for us, so I had to put everybody I met or talked to on a business card. What do they call them? A file tickler.
Yep.
So those, that's what you had to do 50 years ago. Today, you push a button, it comes out, right? And it'll tell you when's their lease up, right? But in those days, we had to go find out. So. Yep. It's a whole different world, which is. But I'll tell you one thing: I don't think someone that doesn't call on clients. I do think if you don't see the whites of their eyes, use the telephone, use all the the canvassing techniques you have to use to be successful. You're not going to do it via blasts or emails or whatever.
No.
I just don't believe it. I thought about. Or someone suggested when I was trying to name my company, they said, "Oh, you know what? Your name is Goldie Wolfe. Get a wolf on your letterhead." I said, "I'm not sure that's a good that's a good connotation. A wolf has sometimes some negative overtones." And I said, it's going to be Goldie B. Wolfe and Company, just like it was called Arthur Roubloff and Company, just like it's called Gerald Hines and Company, just like it's called Trammell Crow and Company. It's the individual and the caliber and the quality of the person and name it represents. And I don't think it's ego. I think it represents what we're all at least I think, it's a personalized service. That's what we're selling. That's a responsibility. I mean, basically, once your name is on it, you want it to be right, you want it to be professional, and you want it to be service-oriented, and you want to be the best in the field. I can't imagine that you put your name on with the hope of not being successful.
Welcome to Stages to Success, highlighting individuals who have helped shape our industry in the Chicago area. My name is Chris Schramko, president of the Northern Illinois Commercial Association of Realtors. On behalf of our association, we are proud to sponsor this podcast series. NICAR provides valuable tools, resources, education, and networking to commercial real estate practitioners throughout the state of Illinois. To learn more about NICAR and the many benefits we offer our members, please visit our website, nicar.com. Thank you.
You're listening to an interview with Goldie Wolfe-Miller, a legendary business leader in Chicago commercial real estate. It sounds like your market was the Loop or downtown, and your sector or your practice that you worked on was office tenant representation. Do I have that right? That was your focus?
That's right. That's basic. Right. Now, having said that, I also had experience leasing buildings. And I have to tell you, there's a building I leased that I learned more about real estate than anything else, which is the Gerald Hines building at 3 First National Plaza. I was the leasing agent. It was pre-leased, and that's a big deal, pre-leasing the 3 First National Plaza, which we never saw in the Chicago market. And I learned how to pre-lease, and pre-leased 600,000 square feet, which was unheard of, at that time. And I learned from, Gerald Hines, their model office, where we were right over the site, and at the end of my little 15-minute pitch, the wall opened, so you got to see the actual site, and they did marketing better than anything I'd ever seen before. So I did leasing, certainly for that 3, 4, 5 year period of time, but still was involved in tenant representation.
Were you fairly new as a tenant rep practice? Was that fairly new to Roubloff and his group?
Yes. I think the most important part was I learned the concept of tenant representation. And what does that mean? It's basically totally to be objective, to be almost like a lawyer representing the potential user, that it's really important for me to provide all possible information without pushing a particular building. What we used to do, and which is, I guess, part of our you call it an elevator speech, we were one of the first groups that actually showed, when we did an analysis of a building, we showed both sides of the transaction. What does that mean? We showed the tenant's costs, but we also showed the return to the developer. Because you're never going to do a deal that somehow or another the developer is not going to walk away saying, okay, I want to do this deal. You got to make a deal. You can't pound away and say, okay, it's only the tenant side, which you can, but when there isn't a lot of space available, you want to make a deal. That's the whole concept. You want the best deal for your client in the availability that's out there.
Yep.
And, there was a competitor of ours who would always say, oh, my goodness, I'm going to go and get the best deal. I'm going to pound away, and I don't care if the developer, what did he say, bleeds, if the developer bleeds. Well, problem was, in time, 2-3 years later, when it actually became an owner's market, the owner that he bled never would do a deal with him. So every tenant that he was bringing to the building never worked with him. So he was doing a client a disservice. But that's aside from the elevator speech. So I think we're objective. We think we obviously take the interest of the tenant first and foremost. We listen. I mean, really, when you come down to it, every deal I structured, and I did a lot of work with the major law firms, and if I took a boat ride down like the river, I put the top tenant in one building, office tenant who was a lawyer, and another one, because when I structured the deals for lawyers, it wasn't net present value. It was what is every year that each individual partner had to come up with dollars. I learned the value of net present value when I did the Beaches corporate headquarters space, because they don't look at every year. They look at what's the net present value of the deal, because I can use my dollars for something else.
Right.
So it was very customized, and that's what we were able to do. We weren't just selling alternatives. Representing the tenant, I learned the language that the tenant wanted, and what was the 2 or 3 year key areas that was very critical to the tenant. And then with that in mind, I was able to screen and get proposals based on that requirement. So instead of selling buildings, so this is a good deal, I was looking at as a tenant rep broker, wearing the hat of the tenant and understanding what their needs are, the structure of the deal, what's critical. Do they need outs? Do they not need outs? Do they need construction dollars? Do they need moving dollars? So do they need free rent? Do they want a longer lease term? So I was then able to get even the proposals from these buildings to satisfy those requirements. The other thing, which is really critical, is by being a tenant rep, and I'm going to say this straight out, our commission is paid no matter where they go.
That's right.
The deals that we were able to do, the servicing we were able to provide, the terms that we were able to provide the tenant certainly met what we were paid to do. And we earned our fees. I mean, it was a very important part. And the other side, which I find fascinating, is that when we didn't do a deal and we could work on a deal 1, 2, 3 years, we didn't get paid.
That's right.
We only got paid on performance.
Yep.
We only got paid on performance. So I think that is pretty amazing.
Is there one particular account, lease assignment, tenant assignment that you won, that you got at the last hour, and it was a huge win for you? Does one of those really stick out in your career? Well,
I got one call one time that basically a lawyer called me and said, "We want to see you." And I said, "Okay, what would you like to see me about?" And he said, "Well, just come in and we'll just chat." Well, it happened to be Oprah Winfrey's lawyer. And they either read about me or heard about me, and they wanted me to buy the Nile studio for them, because Oprah wanted to buy her own studio. And the Nile studio was available, and that was basically for commercials. So I went in and negotiated for that building, and basically it was under the Roubloff name because they didn't want anyone to know that it was Oprah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I bought that for her on Washington. Now obviously it became the Oprah Winfrey building, and on top of it, it started the redevelopment of that whole area. When we bought that building, there was nothing there. It was dilapidated, and now it was just torn down for the McDonald's corporate
That's right.
headquarters. I don't know if that was luck, but it was fun. It wasn't the biggest deal I've ever done, but it was
Oh, that's perfect.
And it's a highly recognizable,
sure,
project.
Right, and it's not. I guess I don't want to discount the fact that hard work pays off, but there are some that you make literally 30, 40 calls and check-ins on over the years, and then you finally win the business. There's another when your phone rings and it's somebody looking for you, and that's
right. If that's your example of luck, yes. But they saw my name somewhere, and they saw what deals I was doing.
Sure.
And so I think we were pretty high profile, in all honesty, because I was a woman in real estate. And just like your name is recognizable, my name was recognizable. And, it was an interesting time to be a woman in real estate. I can tell you that when I first started the interview process, I met with a major real estate firm that will go unmentioned, and he says to me, I'd like to hire you, but not as a broker. You can go get us leads. And I said, what does that mean? He said, well, you can go open the door, and then we'll put in a real broker. I said, really?
Uh-huh.
Oh, of course, he says. You can't be successful. We're going to, just open the door, and you can, canvas all you want, and we'll pay you a salary. And, in fact, they had a couple of lead getters like that, and then we'll turn it over to a real person, a real broker. And I said, well, I'd like to be a real broker. So Roubloff was very good about that. They didn't have any women. They actually did have one. They had one woman who was doing some unique type of deals, not apartment buildings. We didn't have an apartment building residential group at all, but she did some. And she was the first woman broker that they hired. I think she just passed away, Sarah Miller. She was a really lovely lady. But they were very supportive of me as a professional. Now, part of it is because they were very entrepreneurial, and so the first year I won I got the award for the best new broker, whatever it is, by canvassing. I canvassed till I was blue in the face.
Yeah.
And then I won 7 national awards with Roubloff. I was a national producer, not top female producer, not male producer, top national producer 7 years in a row.
That's great.
So, it was a wonderful environment. And then they changed. The Roubloff changed. They decided that they wanted to maybe be a little bit more corporate. They wanted to be more developer. And they were not very comfortable with the independence of the brokers. So, and it's all profiled years and years ago in Crane Chicago Business. They talked about the Roubloff story. So it changed. The whole environment changed, and every broker basically walked away and they wanted to play developer. The problem was they played developer when it hit the skids. And so they had no brokers. They had, very little else. And I think it proved to be a mistake within the corporate environment. So,
but it was good for you because Goldie's own company spun off.
Well, but yes, it was good for me. But I can tell you, I sat in that corner office for hours and hours and hours thinking, what did I want to do? They basically wanted to get the brokers to leave, and so I knew that was going to happen. I could have stayed at Roubloff for another 20 years. I had when you talk about vision, right? I had no vision of, I'm going to start the largest woman-owned commercial real estate company in the country. I would have been happy there for another 20 years. I was their top producer, and I loved the environment. I loved the people, the competition, So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was thinking of maybe going to a company. I certainly had opportunities through the years, but I sat there and I thought about, what if I did this on my own for the sake of discussion? I've tried to live my life in that area that I don't want to wish I would have, could have. Would I have done this? What would be different? Figured I had really nothing to lose. I can always go join something, right? Or join a company, join a tenant rep firm, or join a developer. So I said, let me try this. And what if I started my own company? And I had a group of young brokers that came with me. And I had a financial analyst that came with me, and I can tell you that when I look back, they're all pretty successful in their own right. They've all gone into different areas. One's a developer, one's a broker, one a Chris Shremko. They're all very successful. So it wasn't. I wish I could tell you, and I've said this before a couple of times this morning, but I didn't have a grand master plan. I didn't think I'm going to go start this company. I didn't say that I was going to have a company with my name on the door. Each episode was based on the circumstances that occurred. I left advertising because I wasn't making enough money and I didn't want to be fired at 45. I joined Roubloff because I thought it was a full-service organization that I could learn from. And I started my own company because Roubloff wanted to no longer be in the brokerage business, and that's what I knew.
Yeah, and you were nimble. And you worked hard. That's actually a pretty common denominator in stories like this that I hear.
You call it nimble. I call it flexibility. I guess it's the same thing. When the market shifted, we were tenant brokers. When the market shifted the other way, we were owner brokers, representing owners. You have to be flexible to change with the market conditions. If you don't change, and I'm sitting and thinking about this because I saw this on 2 days ago, where you have to be in any arena, you have to be flexible. Like in retail today, the old line retailers, the Sears, the Montgomery Wards, they didn't show flexibility, and look where they are today.
And I want to end with the Goldie Initiative itself. I see you've already shown the beginnings of this. You wanted to give back to Roosevelt. You're from a very humble upbringing. You want to help people who are coming along. Tell me about the initiative itself. Is it for young women only? Is it for financially needy people? Is there an entry level you're looking for that the people that get this?
Okay, this is a great way to end because it's a great passion of mine today, so thank you. When I started this, I said to myself, looking in the mirror, what really is I want to give back? Where do I want to give back? What is the areas that are critical to me? So yes, John, women. I want to help women. I want to help women in terms of their progression and in terms of their education, but it's number one, women. Number two, what's the other passion? Is real estate. I want to help women in real estate. And what's the other part? I want them to have leadership positions. I want them, after 40, 50 years, I don't see that many women in the corner offices. Maybe there are more people out there. There's more opportunities, perhaps, but certainly not to the degree that I would like to see after 40 or 50 years. So I went to a couple of universities, and I went to Roosevelt. And then the other part was Roosevelt. I really felt they had a real estate school. And it's a graduate school, and it was, again, going back to I felt a common feeling that I wanted to do something that was important for Roosevelt, too. So we started the Goldie Wolfe-Miller Initiative of Leadership for Women in Real Estate. And it's a graduate program, and it's not based on need, and that was very important to me. I want it based on merit. Okay. I want them, number one, because they're in graduate school, they've already decided they want to do real estate. In all honesty, there aren't that many real estate schools and not many real estate degrees in the country. I know that's hard to believe, but there's finance, there's marketing, there's management. You certainly can take real estate courses, but there aren't many real estate schools. The most premier one, or one of the most premier ones, is the Grass Camp School in the University of Wisconsin. And, I heard of that one when I was going to school. And I did graduate work in the University of Chicago in their business school. So when I went to Roosevelt, they came up with this program. I had no idea as to what they were recommending till they actually gave me their proposal, and their proposal was 3 or 4 pronged process. One is, yes, we're going to give financial scholarships to these young women so that they can go to college and these graduate school. And most of them are working, so the financial help was very helpful. We wanted to mentor them, which was very important, and Crew Chicago was very helpful. We got women who became mentors, because I think it's important that someone has a mentor. In fact, I had one young man come up to me and said, I'd like to be part of your program. And I said, nope. It is, it's for women.
You and I both know that acronym CREW. Can you explain that to the listener?
I'm sorry. CREW is Chicago Real Estate Executive Women. It's an organization for women in real estate, and they support each other. But they're already in real estate. It's almost like I won't say it's a trade organization, but it is. It's for Chicago Real Estate Executive Women. So they get together, and now it's become a national organization. So that's where we got our first mentors. And then we had a position in our roster that we wanted to have these young women network. I wanted to show them other industries. I want to show them other people. And so not only they mentored, but I involved them with ULI, Urban Land Institute, and paid for their membership in Urban Land Institute so that they can go to meetings, meet other executives all over the country. ULI is probably, if not certainly one of the most prestigious organizations in the country to get multi-faceted talent, and usually the top. And so we were giving them financial resources, mentors, and quite frankly, networking opportunities, and we would have luncheons and on and on. And finally, and I decided that I wanted to expand the program because we would have boat cruises to, increase dollar amount because initially I was funding it all, but other people got interested. So I said, what about other schools? What about DePaul, Northwestern, University of Chicago? And so I set up it's a 501c3, which is a charitable organization within our own family office. And basically, we were doing the exact same thing, but we hired our own head of the program, a wonderful gal called Megan Abraham, which I think you probably have talked to or maybe got information from.
Yes.
And so we have a phenomenal board, which again has been the work of lots of effort and lots of energy. And so we decided to go into these other universities. So we get applications. All of a sudden, we got an application from I think it was 2 or 3 applicants at the University of Wisconsin, the Grass Camp School. I was delighted. And we tried to figure out how do we do all that in terms of we can give them money, but how do we mentor them? How do we get them to network? And they agreed to come to Chicago. So it was a very easy situation. So now we're in 5 universities. We have our own 501c3. And then they came to me this last year and said, the board and even they call themselves Goldie Scholars, which is just so phenomenal. We've graduated 60 of them already.
60?
In the 10 years, 60 young scholars, young women in wonderful professions. They said, we want to do a gala to celebrate 10 years. Well, I was a little taken back in terms of that's a big movement. Well, they wanted to raise money, and we've raised money certainly through the boat cruises we've had. So we had I guess I said yes, as long as it has a couple of requirements. One, I absolutely don't want to sit down chicken dinner. I don't want to do that. I want it to be high networking. I said I wanted networking on steroids. I want people to meet each other, and I want the ability for our young scholars to meet other people. And they called it the Goldie Gala, and to my utter amazement, and I was just so proud, we had 550 people.
Wow.
And raised $300,000.
Does one story of one of the Goldie Scholars really stick out? I mean, really, it's a perfect case study for what you're trying to accomplish? One
story that sticks out, actually 2, if you don't mind my telling you. One was a gal comes to me and says, well, I'm this, and I want to go to graduate school. I am at, this one was at Roosevelt. And I have 3 sons under the age of 7. I'm newly divorced, and I live an hour and a half away from Chicago. But I'm going to graduate school because I want to develop and grow into something really very professional and be proud of and, be more successful. So not only did she finish and graduate, and this young woman did all her school at night and, raising 3 kids by herself, on and on. She gets her degree and gets promoted in an organization. I got a letter from her the next, within a year. She wants me to write her a recommendation to go to law school. I said, are you kidding me? She went to law school, and so, that was just quite amazing. The other one that always comes to mind was a gal from Pakistan who came to the United States from a country that didn't allow women to be promoted in anything, I guess. And so she left her family, comes to the United States, and gets herself a job but wants to go to school. And so she wants to do something with her life in a country that gives her that opportunity, which she obviously didn't have in her own country. And so she just excelled. She just was so involved. She would show up at the libraries all the time. And she got a job in one company and finally graduated, and then she got promoted to another company and went on. Now she's with a major operation in California. And, I'm thinking it was Pakistan, and maybe it was, I don't remember. It could have been Pakistan. But anyway, so she gets married and invites my husband and me to the wedding. And I meet her mother and father, all in their traditional garb.
Yep.
And I had the opportunity of telling them how proud they should be of their daughter. And it was very touching for me because she really made a contribution that was just phenomenal and a success story and overcame lots and lots of obstacles of where she came from. And some of the graduates we certainly have the majority from the States, but we've had now graduates from, I have one from Russia, China, Argentina. This is when we open the doors to other universities, like University of Chicago and Grass Camp. We have foreign students who are seeking this opportunity to grow and develop in America where they can't get that kind of education or opportunity, in all honesty. And so it's out of just the realm of Chicago. It is now just women in general. And so, again, it's we're supporting them, we're networking, we're seeing them grow. We are now some strategic alliances with corporations, getting them jobs, getting them internships. And we're trying to figure out how do we go and grow in terms of more universities, how do we do that? And it's very exciting. So it's, as I said, the best part of the whole process and project for me is when I sit down and listen to their stories. I do all the interviewing with my board, so I hear the stories of these young women, and I hear what motivates them. I hear what they're doing, their backgrounds. We not only do we look at their grades, we look at their experience in the marketplace. We also look at their essays that they write, and it's extremely rewarding. And I can go back and raise money for this group because I can turn around to the corporate user and say, you're helping a woman actually in school. Mm-hmm. Be promoting them, I guess that to some degree you too can make a difference.
Do you?
And that difference is important to me.
Do you have is there a piece of it that still frustrates you? Like, I know the things I get involved in, it's like, this I thought would be an easy get, and it's not getting there. And is it the women in the corner office? Is there something that you want to see this accomplished that is your next biggest goal?
I don't think it's a frustration. I think it's a recognition that, two or three things, that there's nothing we can change and we just have to deal with it. Women are still the primary caregivers for children. So, it's very hard to, in fact, I had one gal who was phenomenal, and we were talking yesterday, and she says, I'm really aggressive, I'm into my career, but my kid got sick, and I'm home with my kid today, and, all I care about is my kid right now. So I think it's not a problem, it's a benefit, but I think it's an extra responsibility that I think women deal with. I mean, I think it's something that is there. In some cases, women are lucky, and the husbands are more supportive, and that's helpful. But it's I think it crosses all industries, and I think it crosses all professions. It's not a frustration; it's just a fact of life that you have to accept. The other thing that I guess you asked the question, so I'm now thinking of, yes, something does frustrate me a little bit, and, you can ask it yourself. I never, all through the times that I was involved, we never used the word balanced life, okay? Mm-hmm. We were wrong. I don't know. Maybe balanced life and the words that they use today is the way it should be. I haven't figured that one out yet. I mean, that's going to be something I'm going to think about more. Because we didn't have a balanced life. We were working all the time. We were, to be successful, 100% of your life had to be devoted to, doing this. Certainly you had family, but we never, I never went on a vacation. I was always on the phone. Even when I remember I was in Europe one time and was doing a deal off in the bathtub because that was the only place I could get a light in the middle of the night. I gave a speech, I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, to an entrepreneurship university program out in the western suburbs. And I had a whole speech prepared, and da-da-da-da, and then I said, okay, how many of you, just out of curiosity, because I would ask the audience some questions front end, how many of you believe in a balanced life? Okay, John, 100% of the young people in the audience raised their hand. This is an entrepreneurship program in the western suburbs at a college. So I took my speech, I tore it up, and gave another speech because my initial comment was good. I did talk about it a little bit about it, but that we never had balanced life, and maybe that's the other avenue of definition of success. Maybe success isn't in total dollars earned. Maybe success is measured in having a balanced life and having a full life. And except all the stories I've read about, quote unquote, the best, the whatever it is that you're best in, it's 121% commitment, because if you don't do it, someone else will.
And backing way up, your name as you came off that boat was not Goldie. What was your first name?
Goldie.
It was in Poland. They called you Goldie.
Yeah. It's Goldie. I wish I could tell you it was something I made up. In fact, at one point, what did I want to do? I wanted to change my name because at one point, the only Goldie that was around, there wasn't a Goldie Hawn, which is
right.
Great. It was Goldie was Arthur Godfrey's horse. And if you know Arthur Godfrey, the kids made a little fun out of the fact that it was, I was I was named after a horse, or the horse was named after me. So, it's it was my name. And then when I wanted to change it, my mother said, okay, change it, but it's got to start with a G, So I looked at a Gloria, a Gail, a Gwen, I don't know what I looked at. And then I didn't feel like any of those. And I said, okay, well, let's do Goldie. And I have to tell you, it was a plus in my business, because if I left my name, Goldie Wolfe, if they didn't remember Wolf, they certainly remembered Goldie.
Well,
and it was a strong plus for me.
Well, Goldie, it's an amazing arc from the butcher's daughter doing rounds with her mother to drop off orders of meat to being really a philanthropist and benefactor in an international sense in business. It's a great story. I can't wait to edit it and tell it, and it's an honor to interview you.
Okay, thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed today's interview with Goldie Wolfe-Miller, the namesake of the Goldie Scholars, principal of Millbrook Properties, and formerly of Goldie B. Wolfe and Company and Roubloff Properties. Join us again for people and stories from the worlds of the symphony orchestra and commercial real estate for our next episode of Stages to Success. To Success. To Success. To Success. To Success.